Hey everybody, welcome to Pit Stops at Podium, the Rev Partners podcast, where we talk to execs who competed and won, taking their companies from high growth to high scale. My name is Brendan Tollison. I am the co-founder and CEO of Rev Partners, and I'm delighted to have with me today, and actually coming back today, Scott Brinker for this episode of Pit Stops to Podium. Welcome back, Scott.
Awesome. Wow, you've invited me back a second time. Something's got to be working there. Great.
That's right. And, this time I actually have the HubSpot sign in my background. So I feel like a few things have changed. Not to mention, since we last spoke, Scott, actually hot off the press, IDC just came out with a new report around the growth of your ecosystem. Maybe that's a fun place to start before we get into the big idea today. But for our audience, just what are you seeing in the ecosystem? What's the growth that just came out?
Yeah. So it was just a year and a half ago that, IDC had identified, something like $18 billion of future ecosystem growth. This is money that goes to ecosystem partners building around HubSpot, whether they're delivering services or they're delivering software. One of my favorite quotes always from Satya Nadella at Microsoft is ecosystems are working when the people around you are making more money than you are. So that's a healthy sign. But anyway, it's just a year and a half later, IDC went ahead, revised, their projections based on the growth HubSpot had already seen in the past year. And yeah, that opportunity moved from 18 billion to 26 billion. The ecosystem is on fire.
Yeah, that's quite a lot of growth in just a year. So a lot has changed, and this is a fun time to talk, and it's a fun time for you, being the VP of Platform Ecosystem, to experience that and to spearhead that. And so, Scott, one of the things that we're doing this month as a month of HubSpot is we're really talking about HubSpot as the CRM platform for scaling companies, and how does HubSpot really support the enterprise? And ecosystems naturally play a part in that. But I think it's helpful to kind of level set and maybe kind of that contextual layer of why, regardless of the CRM, whether it's a HubSpot or Salesforce or Dynamics, what role does the ecosystem play and what's driving that? And then we can get into what does that look like for HubSpot specifically?
Yeah, well, I think the whole concept of an ecosystem is at the end of the day, customers, businesses, they want solutions. They want their business to work together as a whole. And this isn't about any one piece. It's about how all the pieces work together, and so from a technical perspective, I want my CRM to also integrate with my accounting system, it's whatever the pieces are of your tech stack, that touch the customer journey, whether it's front stage or backstage, ultimately you want all this stuff sharing data. You want all integrating together so that you as a business leader are really able to execute, holistically, right? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. But it's not just the technology. I mean, there's so much change the companies are going through in figuring out what is the right technology. How do they implement it? How do they turn those technical capabilities into organizational capital and business capabilities? And so, right, there's a huge services ecosystem around HubSpot. It's easily twice the size of the technology ecosystem. And again, it's how all these things fit together so that for a business who is using HubSpot as their CRM platform, that basically they're able to leverage everything else from the ecosystem to really, have the whole business come together as a cohesive whole.
Yeah, it's almost, I guess, there are kind of two parts to that. To your point, there's the proliferation of software, and I think as we were joking about earlier, software is eating the world. But there's also the need to be able to connect those systems, and that's really the role it sounds like the ecosystem plays. Is yes, you have the core CRM, but all these adjacent technology solutions, whether it's the front of the house or the back of the house, that an organization is looking to have all connected into one place.
I mean, this is the thing that, I've been studying on the MarTech side for 15 years is just, this explosion of all these amazing, innovative, products and capabilities out there. But, the number one challenge marketers have identified year over year was all those innovations are great, but if I can't get them to integrate, into my core system, it's like the tree falling in the forest, nobody hears it. And so, I kind of take on integration as, really a mission of okay, we have got to unlock the value that all these amazing startups, all these products out there have to offer by helping them work better together.
Well, it's, I think the proof is in the pudding. And I think, looking at the press release from HubSpot's Q2 announcement, I mean, what was it, about 40% year over year increase in integrations? I mean, this is certainly something that you're not only talking about, but you're actually doing. So I think for a lot of those, for just the market in general, I think this would be a good transition point looking at HubSpot specifically. But the approach that HubSpot is taking as it relates to how they're going after or building the ecosystem. So let's talk about kind of three key topics. And it's a little bit, I don't know the right word for this, but let's talk about breadth, depth, and what's next. And so let's talk about your approach as it relates to breadth and depth, and let's get into where is HubSpot going to next. So let's start with breadth.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, celebrating, over 1,000 integrations now, that 40% year over year growth, you might be like, wow, okay, great. Check the box. You've got the ecosystem world covered. The truth is, like, we're just even beginning this. It's, so the site g2.com, which tracks reviews on B2B software, I was recently catching up with them, and just in their database, they have like 103,000 different B2B, software apps, and they acknowledge like they don't even have them all. In fact, it's probably a relatively, North America centric, database. They're adding like 1,000 a month or something like this. And so when you step back and you realize that, okay, all these engines for software creation, AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, all these open source frameworks, all these like no code tools. I mean, like the barriers to creating software have just, fallen to near zero. And again, this is a wonderful thing in the sense that now for almost anything you can imagine, any industry, any particular function, any new capability, any new emerging channel, there's like people building software to help like harness that and take advantage of it. But again, going back to where we were, like, hey, all that innovation is fantastic, but it's really only effective if businesses can integrate that into their core operating system. And so, yeah, on the breadth, I'm very happy that, the catalog is as expanded as rapidly as it has. But yeah, I sort of look to the next 5 to 10 years and I'm like, there's a lot more ahead to be done there too.
But this, that seems to be one of the biggest knocks that at least that we hear in the market is the integration side. So, I think it's exciting to hear that HubSpot is taking this really head on. And to your point, there's a lot of work to do, but at the same time, it's not taking action and really seeing a lot of improvement on that side. So kudos to you as it relates to the product roadmap and the strategy and how you're executing.
Taking the journey one step at a time.
All right. Well, so we talked a little bit about breadth. Let's talk now about the depth aspect in terms of how you think through strategy with the ecosystem.
Yeah. Again, breadth is in some ways the easiest dimension to just sort of measure because, hey, there's a quantitative number, how many integrations do you have? But the really exciting stuff is what's happening at the depth, which is to say not all integrations are created equal. Integrations, like how much data do they exchange? Is that data bi-directional? Are there good ways of making sure that the data gets rationalized, when it comes into a system? Like, okay, what do we do at the next level for integrating around workflow? Making sure that when things are happening in one system, we're able to trigger to cause an action to happen in another system. And that we as marketers, as revenue leaders, we're not looking at the individual tasks so much, but we're starting to step back and orchestrate these broader processes of how we run a revenue business. There's the level of the user experience, how do we help get these things more embedded so that if you're in the HubSpot, platform, and that's where you're spending, 90% of your day, that other tools, that are feeding into that, they're appearing in the HubSpot UI in the places you want, and you can leverage them the way you want. And then on top of that, there's all these concepts of providing good governance in an ecosystem. This is one of the things I've always admired, Apple for is, I guess you could debate, are they too strict? But, they're really focused on making sure that anything that's available in their app store, the customers can basically trust it. They trust, hey, I can get this. It's not going to break my iPhone. It's going to do what it says. It's going to be compliant. It's that same sort of thing in B2B software ecosystems that we can add so much value by just providing enough of that, certification, of what people are, providing into an ecosystem, that we can assure customers of like, hey, as you're getting things that, are certified to work with HubSpot, yeah, they're going to meet this certain set of standards for how they operate, for the compliance that they support, for the support they give. And so, yeah, if you look across data and workflow and UX and governance, you realize you can go really deep with these integrations. And while we've got some really great deep ones today, boy, I'm looking to the future and feeling like, man, there can be hundreds, there can be thousands that go really deep in their integration.
So you said data, workflow, UX, and governance, right?
Yep.
Is there, like, as you think through, like, I mean, it's not fair. It's like saying who's your favorite child, but like, is there certain like hierarchy or ones that you think of those four, here's what we really are looking at, or how do you assess that?
Yeah, I think they kind of build on that level. I mean, if you don't exchange the data, it's again, it's the tree falling in the forest. I mean, a whole point of a system of record is like, hey, there's one place we can go that everything sort of comes in and out from. I think once you get into things like workflow and UX, it kind of depends on the app, and where you're going to get the most value. Some might be perfectly fine, being purely an automation that happens behind the scenes, in a workflow. Others, it might be the way in which they're visualizing things. Like, I don't know, I mean, tons of products in the HubSpot ecosystem, but like I've seen some that, like they're very visual. That's like what they do. And so, yeah, that's a real strength. And then governance kind of feels like one of those things that you just need in order to call yourself an ecosystem. Like, it can't be the Wild West. You need to be, providing some sort of guardrails to make sure that, when people are promoting things in your marketplace, that you're able to make sure that the customers are able to trust that the things they're getting from that marketplace, are good for them.
Yeah, I think that, to your point, that's almost a minimum barrier to entry and non-negotiable. You have to have some level on the governance side. Well, Scott, I think it's a good transition into what's next. So I know you mentioned kind of, as you think about, we're just getting started when you talk about the breadth. But what are you thinking about? What's getting you excited as you say, hey, here's where the ecosystem's going, and here's why the market should be really excited about what HubSpot's building?
Yeah, well, I think probably one of the things that's most exciting to me at the moment is more and more integrations from the adjacencies. So we're used to, in the context of like marketing and sales, like, there are a bunch of different special tools that, different teams use, and you want to make sure they integrate to your CRM. Great solutions there. But what's really exciting is you're seeing more and more integrations that are a little bit further out in their adjacencies, like connecting in with, finance systems, accounting is like a great example. Now, all of a sudden you start to unlock these things where marketing and sales are able to make, decisions in who they're engaging with, and, what sort of message they're doing based on like actual things like real lifetime value. Are people ahead in their account? Are they behind in their account? You start looking at things like, on the customer success side, like, learning management systems, field service solutions, things that, they're getting further and further out from like, core marketing and sales. But when you actually think of the end-to-end customer journey, you realize like, yeah, all these things feed in to like really now how modern revenue operations wants to look at the business as a whole. And that's where you get to the point where, when I was mentioning the, 100,000 products in G2, like you can sort of say, well, okay, only a certain number of those are like, marketing or sales related. And that's true. But it's actually the stuff that gets further and further, beyond marketing and sales as a core discipline. But if we integrate some of this data, we can really actually help marketing and sales leverage, these other customer viewpoints or these other customer touch points. Yeah, I feel like we're just in the green field, so many tremendous possibilities there.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for sure. I think, to your point, it's amazing to see how fast things have changed, just in terms of when you talk about the adjacent markets, where it really everybody now is considered like responsible for the customer journey and playing a role, and now being more proactive than reactive and having those actual insights. Once you're able to connect the systems, have a one source of truth, and see that data in a way that you can make decisions on, it really does transform the way that companies are now able to behave and act as an organization. So it's fun to witness, and I'm thankful that HubSpot continues to be in the cutting edge of that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, again, like I feel like the technology capabilities of it are really just the, like sort of the entry. What are they for poker? Like the ante. It's like, okay, like right, ante, and like we need the actual technology to connect together to get this data. But where like all the real action happens is then what are the playbooks you're creating on top of that? What's the strategy you're putting on top of that? Like how do you leverage that data and that integrated capability to do things that are, just, competitively powerful? Yeah, I mean, again, that's really where, it's like 10% the technology, 90% like the actual, like, strategy and people and, the creative for that. So those are the things that are really exciting to see how people harness it.
Yeah, I mean, there's all like the buzzwords about alignment and clarity. Well, that's true, but I mean, I really think it's just the power is like you're creating that common language, and everyone has to see the table, and now you can really make those decisions that you couldn't make before. I mean, you were kind of in the dark. It's turning the lights on and being able to understand what's really happening and where that organization needs to focus and what they need to prioritize. Well, Scott, I really do appreciate you stopping by again for the second time and giving us an update on what's going on in the ecosystem as HubSpot continues to move up market. Well, last thing, I mean, we got inbound coming up. What are you excited about with inbound?
Well, I hear there's a party happening on like Thursday night.
Yeah, that was well done. Scott will be a keynote speaker at the Sprocketeer happy hour on Thursday night. So if you are going to be there at Inbound, that's what, Scott, 3 weeks from now, Thursday night, you'll get to hear from Scott, and you should buy him a drink if you're there. I think he would appreciate getting to know you, whether you're an ecosystem partner or just part of this community as an operations professional. I think that'd be a great next step for our audience to take.
Awesome. And since I think it's going to be an open bar, like it's the best time to buy me a drink.
Exactly. Drinks on us. So, well, Scott, thanks again. We really do appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks again.
All right. See ya.